Okay. I'm using this set of slides that we developed and presented to the College of Engineering Advisory Board uh, about our NSF Revolutionizing Engineering Departments Innovation Grant called Using Scrum to Develop an Agile Department. I just want to use it in this context to tell you a little bit about Scrum and how it works. This has got a nice little example I use of how Scrum putatively works. So my colleagues on this grant are Dr. T in our department, Dr. Masood Tahidnejad, and then Jay Pembridge, who's in engineering fundamentals, and Erin Bowen, she's the chair of psychology and behavioral sciences at Prescott. So I get to work with a Prescott colleague on this. That's a good thing. We're not going to go through all these slides, but I just want to work through some of them, especially through the example, to explain sort of some of how Scrum works. So the vision for the grant is an agile department that responds to student and industry needs. We want to make sure that students who graduate from our programs are able to work in agile environments. That's going to be increasingly likely in industry. We also want them to be able to work in non-agile departments. And so we want to learn how to do Scrum and be agile ourselves so we can be models for agile use by our students. So again, I mentioned agile engineers who can work within agile and non-agile environments. And so we're trying to use more agile in our classes. And we want to use also what's called evidence-based instructional practices, and not just how we were taught, but things that we know work better to improve student learning. And since we've added to this also to use what's called inclusive instructional practices. We want everybody to be welcome in our department. We don't want people to feel excluded because of their background or any other feature. We want people to succeed, and we want a culture that's welcoming for everybody. And so and there's practices you can do in the classroom that makes for a more welcoming and inclusive classroom. We want to adopt those. We want our faculty to have an agile faculty culture. So again, we want to use agile methodologies in our department operations. And one of the things you'll see in the Scrum approach is it's got what's called a retrospective, where you reflect on how things are going and you make improvements. So what is Agile? Agile grew out of it really comes out of the Toyota manufacturing process. It's really sort of where it starts in hardware and manufacturing. And it was discussed in that there's I'm going to blank on the name of the paper, but there's a paper that was published in Harvard Business Review where this idea of Scrum and small teams and the like first was approached. But this was formalized in the software world by a bunch of people that got together at the snowboard retreat, which is just sort of east of Salt Lake City. They were there skiing and doing software engineering. And they wrote this manifesto for agile software development called the Agile Manifesto. It's got its own website there. I always it tickles me this image here that looks like they're having a seance or something. But here's the four big points in the Agile Manifesto. Individuals and interactions over processes and tools. Waterfall was the way things were done at that time, and very static kind of approach. So you must do the requirements and you must do the design. So again, individuals and interactions over that. Working software over documentation, comprehensive documentation. Customer collaboration over contract negotiations. So rather than fighting with the customer about whether you did what they said you did, you work with them and try and figure out to deliver what they want. And then responding to change over following a plan. So it's being flexible. And I like this. There's value on the items on the right. We value the items on the left more. Principles related to Agile. Uh, so again, satisfy the customer, welcome changing requirements, deliver frequently, uh, work with business and developers must work together. A motivated and highly team with high morale are great. So let people do what they can do best. Uh, Team meetings, face-to-face conversations are better than email. Working software is really what should be measured. This should be sustainable. You ought to be able to work 40 hours a week and go home at night and not have to sit there and work 12 hours a day just to finish what you're trying to get done. But there should also, an emphasis on good design and technical excellence, simplicity. Uh, the best things come from self-organizing teams when you put people together and let them do what they can do best and don't tell them how to do it. And then every so often you stop and reflect and decide what you can do better. So Scrum is an Agile framework, as it says here, that is lightweight, it's simple to understand, and it's hard to do. And we've been doing it for about a year now in this research project, and this is exactly right. It's lightweight, it's simple to understand, and it's hard to do. It's difficult to master. And but as it says here, the essence is a small team of people, and the individual team is highly flexible and adaptive. Uh, so what's going to come next is just an overview of how it works. So organizations, enterprises, nonprofit or profit enterprises have stakeholders, investors for for-profit enterprises, donors and alumni for nonprofits, and you also have customers, people you're building things for and work for. So in this image, imagine it's a software shop, and this could be the owners and the investors, and then this could be the customers, and the customers we want to build this new phone. This is the original XKCD phone. I don't know if you saw this past week, the XKCD 12 phone came out, which is also full of wonderful little features. This one though, they're thinking, oh, it's this, it could run Android and iOS. It's got a camera on the side. It simulates an alternative speed of light, which is 100 miles an hour, and adjusts the clock as the phone accelerates, so you can get some relativistic effects. It's got an accelerometer that detects when the phone is falling and it makes it scream. It says hi when you turn it on, expose it to light. And then the flight aware partnership, it makes airplane noises when flights pass overhead. Um, in the development process and in the enterprise, there's an individual called a product owner, and he works for the stakeholders, and he represents the interests of both the stakeholders and the customer. So he knows what they're trying to build here, and he creates a backlog. And he populates it with the items that the customers would like to have in the phone, the features. So here's the accelerometer that makes the phone scream when it's falling. And these are accompanied by both a value, so they think this is worth $20 a phone, and also an estimate of how much effort it's going to take to get it done. And in Scrum, effort is often measured in an abstract unit called points. That it's neither time nor it's sort of a time and energy. Some things don't take long, but they're hard. And some things are easy to do, but they take a long time. And so Points tries to incorporate that in one number. The FlightAware partnership, $15 of value and 13 points. Custom blend of iOS and Android, $5 of value, but 55 points. It's hard to do, but it has little value. And also when exposed to light, the phone says, hi. So that's easy to do, 8 points, but it's not a lot of value. So the as you can see, the product owner rank orders things here by value. I mean, the product owner is working for the stakeholders. They're trying to make money for the company, and so would like to get the higher value features implemented first. So at what's called a sprint planning meeting, the product owner takes the product backlog to the development team, the people who are actually going to implement this stuff. And the development team looks at this and they say, oh, we've been running about 15 points a sprint. So we could probably get the expose the light one done. That'd be easy, but that wouldn't take up our whole time. It would take us at least 2 sprints to do the accelerometer thing. We can't get that one on one sprint. So maybe we could do the FlightAware partnership. That's about 13 points. We've been running 15 or so. That 15 points a sprint, that's called a velocity. So that's within our velocity. We should be able to achieve that. And so the development team says, we're going to pull the FlightAware partnership our sprint backlog, and we're going to make that sprint goal. That's going to be the goal of our sprint, to get this FlightAware partnership implemented. And to do that, we're going to have what's called a sprint backlog. And these are the more finer grained things we think we have to do to get the item implemented, to achieve the sprint goal. The idea of the sprint is to achieve the sprint goal. The sprint is a longer frame of time, say again, a week or 2 weeks, up to 2 months or so, but not much longer than 2 months in most Scrum implementations. And they chunk this into, okay, we got to do the interface to FlightAware. That would be like 5 points. And we think we can do the interface to the airplane noises. That'd be another 5 points. And we got to get them to work together. And that should be 3 points. So yeah, we think that first, the product owner's estimate was about right. And also, yeah, we think we can get this done. And then what's called a Scrum board or a work board. And so there's items on here. You can see what's in the backlog. You say what's being worked on right now, and you also move stuff to done. So you can always tell, what's being worked on and what's done. The work in progress may actually have tags to say who's working on what and things like that in a more complicated project. So they start the sprint. and they move the development interface to FlightAware into the work in progress, and they're working on that. They work on it for a day. It doesn't really get done, and they get together. So they get together every day in this what's called a stand-up meeting, a daily stand-up or a daily scrum. And again, it's from rugby. Everybody huddles together and tries to move this thing together forward. And at the scrum, you're asking, okay, what did you get done? What do you think you're going to get done today? Right? And what's keeping you from getting done? What are the impediments? And this person who also works for the enterprise called a Scrum Master. Master is a lousy word. Sensei would be a better word, just because of the issues associated with the word master. It's about mastery, though. It's not a dominance thing here. The Scrum Master represents the team to the enterprise. The product owner represents the enterprise to the team, and the Scrum Master represents the team to the enterprise and says, if they need things, they try and get stuff, software tools or coffee in the coffee lounge or whatever. The Scrum Master is supposed to be a servant leader is the term. So they meet in their daily Scrum, and they're like, well, we don't really have a good interface to FlightAware. We need to buy the software and stuff, and so it takes them a little while to get that done. The next day they've got it built. They've got the FlightAware interface built. And they meet the next day. Okay, now we're going to move into the interface to the airplane noises. And again, in a day or so. And then the last one, we want to manage the interfaces. And that, so achieve what they were trying to do. The sprint goal is accomplished here. They've moved everything from the sprint backlog through work in progress to done. They've had their daily scrums. They have this burn down chart we've been looking at here, which measures how many points they got done in each increment. And so that, again, the slope of that is a measure of their velocity. And calculate that. In this case, they got 13 points in 5, so they had a 2.6 points per day velocity. So at the end of the sprint, the development team and the product owner and the scrum master take what they built. They take their minimum viable product, and they meet with representatives from the customer's organization and representatives from the enterprise, the stakeholders, the investors, and they say, okay, we'd like to show what we got done. And our sprint goal was to develop the FlightAware interface. The plane flies overhead, and makes airplane noises, and the customers say, that's fantastic. We can take now, and the product owner says, okay, we can move the FlightAware partnership off the product backlog, but the stakeholders are there. Wow, that's really cool. Has anybody thought about, what happens when the space station goes over? They say, we'd like, when the space station goes over, we'd like for it to make Star Trek noises. And so let's add and the product owner says, well, yeah, that's a little bit more complicated than the FlightAware, but not as bad as the building this custom blend. So the iOS and Android, so maybe 21 points, and then of course that ought to be bumped up in the product backlog because the value is $20. They think they get $20 for it. So through the sprint review meeting, by meeting with the customers and the stakeholders, they get new ideas. So the requirements have changed. They said, oh, we want to add this feature. And everybody's like, yeah, sure, that's a great idea. Let's add that feature. So, but after the sprint, so everybody's happy. The sprint planning meeting went well. The investors say, yeah, your company's doing great. We'd like to, throw more money into your company and see you develop more stuff. Go out and hire more people so you can do, build space aware and build all these custom features and stuff. Once the customers and the stakeholders leave, the product owner and the scrum master may leave. The development team is called a sprint retrospective. And they ask themselves, what's the single thing we could have done differently that would have made the biggest difference for the better? What could we have done differently? And they say, well, we could have scheduled that meeting differently and gotten it done sooner, or we could have, oh, you put that into that folder, and that I wasn't looking there. We could have communicated better, but they really needed to get the FlightAware interface purchased earlier, so they could have worked better with the stakeholders. Say, what we really like to do is do better communication with the stakeholders next time. And so when they go into, they've got that aware. And this whole thing happens cyclically. Here's the sort of the overview of a whole sprint. The sprint planning, the daily scrum with its daily, again, you see daily, the smaller loop there. And then once you get done, you go to the sprint review and then the sprint retrospective, and then you do it again. You have another sprint planning meeting. So that's really the overview of Scrum. The rest of the slides here talk about our project and what we're doing and who's on it and stuff like that. So really that's not as pertinent here. But again, I just want to give this overview of Scrum and how it works for y'all.